Well, thank you very much for joining us. This is Platform on the network service of the NTA. I'm Ruth Aguele. The National Social Investment Program was created by the federal government in 2016 to ensure a more equitable distribution of resources to the vulnerable population, which includes women, youth and children. Now, it has 4 components under it. That is the N-Power scheme, which provides young Nigerians with job opportunity and a monthly stipend of 30,000 naira. The conditional cash transfer, which supports the poorest of the poor in the society with monthly allowance of 5,000 naira for self-sustainability. We also have the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program, GEEP, a micro-lending investment program targeted at entrepreneurs, which provides no-cost loan to its beneficiaries, subdivided into market money, trader money, and farmers' money. Now, there is also the Homegrown School Feeding Program, which provides daily meals for primary school pupils, all under the purview of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. And interestingly, plans are underway to implement the alternate school program. But what is it all about? How has the ministry been able to sustain the NSIP so far? And how are the targeted beneficiaries selected? How is the coordination of the NSIP across the 36 states and the FCT? What should Nigerians expect as the program progresses? Our focus on Platform today is sustaining the National Social Investment Program. And my guest is Dr. Umar Binder, National Coordinator, National Social Investment Program, also Chairman, Technical Working Group for the Alternate School Program. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Binder.
Thank you very much.
Okay, before I introduce my panelists, let me quickly run through a bit of his profile. Dr. Umar Binder has a master's and doctorate degrees from the prestigious Cranfield Institute of Technology, now Cranfield University in the United Kingdom. Professionalized is an agricultural machinery design and development engineer. That was way back in 1987 and 1991, respectively. Dr. Binder has numerous professional qualifications and awards, including Chartered Engineer, UK, Current Registered in Nigeria, Fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Engineering, Fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers, Fellow of the Nigerian Institution of Agricultural Engineers, Fellow of the Solar Energy Society of Nigeria, and National Productivity Order of Merit awardee. Dr. Binder has earned several national and international awards with a wide technical working experience in Nigeria, UK, and Oceania. He was the immediate past Director General, CEO of the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, that is NOTAP. In 2020, he was appointed as the Director of Innovation and Research at the Air Force Institute of Technology, Kaduna. Currently, he is the Special Assistant to the President on NSIP and also the National Coordinator, like I stated earlier, for the National Social Investment Program in the Office of the Honorable Minister of the Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. Call him expert and accomplished engineer, and you will not be wrong. Thank you once again for joining us on
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, and let's also welcome our panelist, Laraba Murai. She's the humanitarian reporter for the Abuja Inquirer. Thank you very much, Laraba, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and you look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Binder, let's begin this way. Now, this is the first time in the history of Nigeria that we're seeing an administration throw its weight on, the National Social Investment Program to, as a way of filling the margin of social inclusion. And it's new. This is the first time we're seeing so much, From your assessment, it's 5 years and still counting. And it can be daunting if we have to sustain a huge investment like this. How far so far?
Well, thank you very much. The government has a lot of firsts, and it's for the first time since 1960 when we got independence that a government has established a dedicated ministry to look at poverty alleviation or poverty eradication. It has always been programs, People's Bank, DFRI, MAMSA, NAPEP, FIP, and so on. But this time, it is a fully dedicated ministry for sustainability, of course. Secondly, the National Social Investment Program is an innovation, to be quite honest, and it is an intervention-based innovation. You don't need Einstein to come to Nigeria to tell you that poverty is a real issue. Poverty is causing a lot of havoc. All the bits and pieces that we see happening, young people who are restive, the herders and farmers, which the herders are young, the farmers are young. When you look at kidnapping and so on, when you see the videos on social, it's all young people. So you don't need any research actually to tell you that youth empowerment is a key strategy for Nigeria to deploy, and that is the focus of the National Social Investment Program. You're right, it was planned in 2015. We commenced the implementation in 2016. Then it was under the Office of the Vice President, and then with the creation of the ministry in 2019, that program has been moved to the ministry for sustainability again. So we don't want an administration will finish and then the Office of the Vice President will change and then somebody will come and say, but this one is just like you have Ministry of Agriculture or whatever. Though it's not sectoral, you also have a dedicated ministry. And the implementation so far is strong. And what is expected of the ministry is what the ministry is doing. It is continuing with the merits of the implementation and strengthening it. Just like you mentioned, the alternate school program is like another piece of the puzzle. That is
We're going to look at the alternate school program as we progress in the discussion. But from what you're saying, yes, it's been sustained subsequently. There are different components under the NSIP, and so far we have seen beneficiaries drawn from different angles and all of that to be part of these initiatives. A lot of people have asked, why are they not part of these beneficiaries? You know, what is the criteria in selecting these beneficiaries?
Well, there are 4 key clusters under the NSIP. The first cluster that most people will know about is the end power. You know, it's like the end power. And this cluster is literally dedicated on building capacity of young people and giving them skills and competencies so that they can be able to open their eyes and see the opportunities in our country and be engaged, either to employ themselves or to be employed by another person, or even employ themselves and employ others. Literally the whole thing is supposed to generate that youthful momentum for entrepreneurship to thrive using skills. And under that particular cluster, we have the graduate component, which is harvesting graduates of tertiary institutions, people with degrees and HNDs and so on, who are unemployed. And they are harvested through a portal. And as I said before, it's an innovation. And if you leave it open with forms and people should queue up and so on and so forth, you will have millions and millions, and then you start saying, unless you know somebody, you will not be part of it. This one is a portal. We are in the 21st century now. Most young graduates of Nigeria have, to a certain extent, smartphones. They have access to cyber cafes. Their friends have connectivity, and therefore they can go to the website or the portal of a management information system, put your name, your degrees, and everything, and at the click of a button, you are in. At least you're boarded. And then subsequently, the selection procedure continues. We have also the non-graduate component, where we are providing training in specific trades, you know, how to provide services in the hotels and service industry, how to do plumbing and this type of unit capacity trades. So again, it's the same thing. So there's nothing like if you're a graduate or a non-graduate, and the only thing is based on the budgetary allocation. For Empower, every graduate that is hooked up and selected is on a stipend of 30,000 naira per month. And we have a very carefully shared numbers per state. So it is implemented in all the 36 states and the FCT using certain indices, population, poverty incidence, and so on and so forth. And every state has that. But the total allocation for Empower when we started in 2016 was 500,000 beneficiaries. It may surprise you. The registration only on the portal probably hits like 6 to 10 million people.
And that's for this batch C.
Well, batch C is even 6 million.
Yes.
And so this is only Empower. The second is the Enterprise and Empowerment Program, which is a microcredit delivery, and you reeled it out, market money, for young women and older women who have skills and wanting to establish or formalize their informal trade, extracting oil, selling things and so on, trader money, farmer money, and that is also another vigorous cluster. The third cluster is the school feeding program, where we are trying to address the enrollment levels in primary schools, feeding class 1 to 3. And even in Abuja now, if you were to go to Wusetu or Wuse Market and put a big pot of rice and stew and say, hey, this is free, I'm sure you'll see people struggling on it. So food actually is a magnet. So when you use it in school, it means you can attract children to come, and then you can improve the enrollment. And then the final one is the conditional cash transfer, where you are selecting very poor and vulnerable households, and you are then advancing a 5,000 naira catalyst stipend to a household per month. So this is generically what NSIP is all about.
You're going to still tell us how they are being selected, but I know Laraba is itching to ask a question, so go ahead.
Yes, okay. You have said, you have listed out all the programs, sir. How do you think it has impacted the Nigerian economy?
Well, this is a very $1 million or $1 million question. Impact assessment is based on a change. So when you started, poverty is very high, youth restiveness is very high, and other challenges are very high. You implement something and then you measure, you impact assess, and then you see that it is lowering down, and then you can say the impact is positive. And if it is increasing, the impact is negative. Now, as far as the NSRP is concerned, mopping up these young people under Empower has demonstrated that some have actually created their businesses. And we have a reasonable amount of evidence on this. Some are now employed by others, because the way the graduate scheme works is you teach, is you go and teach in a school. Some of the schools have absorbed these young people because they are very good, or earn tax where they are participating in revenue generation. When they are good, they are absorbed. So again, we have evidence where a reasonable percentage of them, within the region of 40 to 50%, have been absorbed in employment. Many actually have woken up to the opportunities, because some of the things that we give these young people is that we give them devices, tablets, with a lot of information about Nigerian opportunities in them. You cannot believe it. Some out of the 30,000, they are saving 10,000, and they are now starting bits and pieces, and they are now employing 1 or 2 people going on. There are some that I know to do with garbage collection. They just went ahead and say, well, we can be able to get a wheelbarrow to 10 each up, collect all the plastic bottles, and be able to now sell it to people who are recycling. We have evidences like that. So to a certain extent, Empower alone, the shock positively on Nigeria is enormous. But then this is a huge economy. And with 200 million people and poverty averaging between 40 and 45, it is a big, huge Herculean task. We can only get stronger to ensure that the impact
Because
is
I was just going to ask you if you can put a number to it, in terms of percentage,
yes.
The impact.
Yes, well, the impact assessment, as I said before, on a scale of 0 to 10, when you look at the total number in batches A and B for Empower is 500,000. You compare it to the pool of registrants, which is in the region between 6 to 10 million people. Then you can say it is a slice of that. Now, when you look inside that 500,000, probably around maybe 300 to 400 are still actively doing one thing or the other when they weren't doing anything. So you're talking about maybe 70, 80% of those engaged. But then we are opening. The president saw this positivity and increased the number that we can actually hook up onto it by another million. So hopefully, if we sustain our efforts and learn from the experiences of the past, we may actually get up to 80% success rate.
You're talking about the increase now for batch C.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that has come up because the batch A and B, we saw the irregularities, a lot of complaints from some of the NPAS beneficiaries of inconsistent payment due to some of the problems that was caused by them, and also the process of registration and all of that. Now that has been addressed subsequently. How is your office, going to ensure that this batch C, the numbers are going to increase. So definitely we won't say we can take out the irregularities. How will your office ensure that it's streamlined, it's sustained without those?
Well, as I said before, if you are technically committed, particularly in our country, you have to bend backwards to learn from your experiences. Anybody who is implementing a social project in Nigeria to come and tell you that he has not faced problems is literally lying, because there are huge challenges. Challenges in this country include corruption and poverty and uninclusiveness and so on and so forth. All that is actually caught up within the social investment. So what we have done this time around, after the shocker of the COVID even destroyed a lot of our investment, because social protection projects is about people. It's about putting people together, training people, employing people, showing them things, and then you can't do it in the middle of the program. And so what we have done now is we have launched what we call as NASIMS, the National Social Investment Management System, where it's a very broad information and communication technology tool to ensure that first, when the intending beneficiaries want to hook up to, the ones that we have registered, 6 million or so, we said, go to the portal. We have opened the portal to everybody, and then you click, you have a number, you go to your own page with your data, update your data. We have now gone through that, and we have gotten something like between 1.5 to 2 million people who have corrected their data. It is out of this that we are going to do by C1 and C2, which is 1 million selected. So here you are dealing with numbers. It's not images and who you are coming from, what is your surname, and so on and so forth. So they've all updated it. Then they have set a test on digitally to make sure that you are not cyber, challenged. So that is where it begins. So you have to pass that test. It's literally questions like, what is the name of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? That is how difficult the questions are.
Simple.
Yes, So you go through that test, and then you go to the next level. They start looking at, without violating the numbers, the levels per state. Then they start looking at what is your selection? What do you want to do? On that. So all the questionnaire is targeted in such a way that guiding you where to go. And then people are selected up to the mark of 500,000. And then the attachment will start to where they are attached, whether to schools or to the tax platforms and so on and so forth. Then we have, before we never had the independent monitors very vigorously. This time around, already we have our independent monitors, 5,000 of them, fully well trained with tools for monitoring these people individually, plus all the other beneficiaries under the clusters. So again, learning from history, we have to intensify our monitoring and evaluation. All of it digitally so that you can be able to get first-hand. And so on and so forth. It's a long story, but yes, we have learned from the past, and we are using what we have learned from to address some of these issues.
Okay, sir, the program JEEP, I understand it is loan being given to trader money.
Yeah.
Are they remitting those loans since you started? Is there any are those traders remitting the money, or they just collect the money and they don't come back?
Well, JEEP is a micro loan delivery innovation. It has 3 products: the market money, targeting women and young people who are within the informal sector vigorously. They have skills, but they don't have access to resources, and therefore you power them. You have the trader money, young people who can move up and down, seeing opportunities, moving groundnuts from here to there, oil from here to there, to make a living, but they don't have access to money. And then you have farmer money, which is small-scale farmers. They have skills, they have their land, probably have the skills to raise animals and so on and so forth, but they don't have access to resources. Now, the new and innovative approach of the JEEP is that it is a no-interest loan. I know your question is to do with repayment. Are they repaying to evolve the concept of sustainability? Yes, these are loans that are supposed to be repaid over a 6-month period because they are small. Trader money is 50,000 naira. Market money is 50,000 naira. And farmer money, because there's a long gestation, is 300,000 naira, and we expect a group to work together. So now, when this program started, it was actually implemented in the office of the Vice President. That is when it all took off. And then when it's moved, JIP was totally and solely implemented by Bank of Industry, only Bank of Industry. And, but now, the President has approved that we engage further financial institutions to open up this space and increase the potential for financial inclusiveness of our people. So, yes, there are repayments. I cannot reel out the figures for you here, but we are looking at repayment within the region of maybe 30 to 50%. Again, COVID shook this. When you are selling things in the market, and you are making 1 or 2, and then COVID hits you, and then they say markets are closed, you cannot go anywhere, it breaks it. And you know, business is a dynamic thing. You are buying and selling and making things, eating half of it and saving half of it, and now you can't do anything. So you eat all your savings, and then the business has. So we are also looking at that to see how do you shock treat that. And Mr. President has approved, I'm sure you must have heard, the grant to rural women.
Yes, the
of 20,000 naira. Yeah. So all that is part of the COVID support. And even the Bank of Industry, I think in the around end of December, very early in January 2021, has advanced nearly £1 billion naira of 10,000 naira to women particularly and young people, you know, as a grant. It's a loan grant, sort of. But again, it's all to as a shocker for the COVID, but certainly COVID has affected the implementation of this.
Let me be clear, the 20,000 one-off cash grant, that's not a loan.
No, it's free.
That's
grant.
a grant,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a grant.
But from what you're saying about the JIP, yes, they're given a grace period because of the COVID, you know, the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. But yes, again, the 20,000 naira cash grant that is being given to rural and peri-urban women, the target is 125,000 women. Yeah. Why is it limited to that number? And where are they drawn from? Because people have asked, do they just randomly go distribute 20,000 naira? How are they selected? Because the selection process is very key.
Yes, you see, the thing is, Nigeria has a fantastic structure. From the country as a federal, you are broken down to 109 senatorial districts. And you have leaders there in the Senate. They are not executive implementing, but they can help you in their constituents to ensure that their constituents are fairly covered. Then you have 360 federal constituencies, and you have all the representatives in the House of Representatives. They too, they are part of this implementation. Then you have the 36 states. You know, you have all the ministers in the federal executive, they are over 43, they are all part of it. So stakeholders like that, even down to permanent secretaries, people who have territorial representation, who will not pocket 20,000, have all been factored in the process of selecting very core people. I was involved in that, just to make sure that you are selecting very vulnerable people who traditionally they have skills, like my mother, you know.
But your mother is not part of it.
Well, my mother is not. I'm just like, okay. You know, a mother, for example, a poor woman. She has skills to extract oil out of granules. She can fry granules. She can actually sew some of these pepe, as you know, Hausa people do. They can do local soap and so on and so forth. But yet, they don't have access to a penny. When you give these people 20,000, and these are very carefully selected, meaning you go down to the community. And even if it is 3 or 4 that you select within a community, the impact already is huge beyond you can. But certainly there are challenges where you may select the wrong person who will just take your 20,000 and buy airtime. It could happen. But the selection process is very inclusive of all this leadership that I've revealed to you, who you don't need training to do. You don't say queue up, and then you get representation based on their constituency initiative, and you have a very good number. We do physical verification to actually, and we see this. When
You
we
go
see,
to the communities.
we go to the community with our own lists, and they must have their names, their telephone number if they have one, the local government, the ward, very, very clearly and meticulously. And they queue up, we see them, even if it is through the accounts before you tick them, you see them. So when you see a strong person who, not that they don't deserve, but I mean, you have to use some kind of criteria. You ask questions before you clear them before they benefit. So these are the rule of thumb that are used. The numbers are too small to actually start digging too deep into it, but these are all initiatives that hopefully will continue.
But there is a national social register.
Yes.
Are they being drawn from there? Because I know beneficiaries for the conditional cash transfer are drawn from the national social register.
Yes.
So why are the people benefiting from the 20,000 naira cash, one-off cash grant, why are they not drawn from the national social register?
The national social register is registration of households,
Okay.
not individuals. And this is, again, for the first time in the history of our country, that we are now strategizing to document poor households all over Nigeria by the community themselves. It's not somebody going with an enumeration tool to say, so it's the community that started and say, oh, Ruth, you are the head of that house. That house is very poor. They don't have water, they don't have food. Put them in the register. Then they will look at it and say, oh, no. You have a bicycle now. The 3 of your children are working in the bank, and all your children are in private school. I beg, rest small now. You cannot join the register. So in this registration, and this project is supported by both the Abuja the resources recovered and also the World Bank, as we speak, we have 7.9, approximately 8 million households nationwide in all the 36 states and FCT, and the registration is continuous. So drawing the individuals for the conditional cash transfer is individuals, but this one for conditional cash transfer project is actually household. So the 5,000 naira goes to the household that is poor and vulnerable.
Okay, Larva.
Okay, so I was going to ask, we have been talking about national social investment programs, but we haven't identified for each program how many numbers of people have been captured. Can we have a breakdown from the N-Power, JIP, conditional cash transfer?
The N-Power batches A, B, C, we are on C now. And batches A and B, the total number of beneficiaries is 500,000. And on top of that, we have another 50,000 for the non-graduate, again shared nicely.
Okay, so we have non-graduates and graduates.
Non-graduates and graduates. Graduates are the volunteers. They are attached to certain areas, while non-graduates are given shock treatment training to do with IT and plumbing and so on and so forth. Then in batch C, we are hoping to do 1 million, but we have batch C1, which currently now we are processing, and hopefully it will take off very, very soon, for 450,000 plus the 50,000 of non-graduate to make 500,000. And immediately after that, we're going to now again attach another 500. The school feeding program, as we speak, we have a database of pupils in schools nationwide approximating to 10 million children who are being fed with 1 meal a day. And then when you look at JIP, the total beneficiaries as we speak who have actually taken the loan and we're monitoring them is 4 million, and we're hoping to engage another 3.5 to 4 million before the third quarter of this year. And then the conditional cash transfer, the total number of households as we have in the social register is around 7.98 million households, with 36 million individuals in those households. And the beneficiaries, as we have, is around 1.7 or so million people who are households who are actually benefiting from the conditional cash transfer. So that is the numbers.
So are we looking to increase the?
Of course, the uniqueness of the NSIP is that this is an intervention. So when we are doing things, remember, N-Power is to do with capacity building, but this is an intervention. NDE2 is doing that. SMEDAN is doing that. So by the time you mop up the data of all the actors, plus the state activity, states too are doing similar things, and you mop it up, then you can get a picture. That is why the major mandate of the ministry is actually this coordination and facilitation for cooperation. In the course of time, when the coordinating committee chaired by the Honorable Minister meet, she will get information from UBE. What are the effects of Ministry of Education on primary education? And then we put the interventions we have. They will ask, what are the beneficiary platforms of NDE in the Ministry of Labor? And then we will put Empower, and then you can have a national picture. Then you look at what is JIP doing, what are the activities of SMEDA in terms of small scale. You put so all these contributing agencies are in a committee chaired by the minister, and that is the major mandate of the ministry on how do you coordinate all these activities to see a sharp image on what is happening to Nigerian poverty.
You know, it's quite interesting from what you're saying. A lot of, you can imagine the number of beneficiaries that increases. This is more like an eye-opener, you know, but people have asked the question of accountability, transparency. You know, you are the national coordinator for NSIP nationwide. And if we want to look at proper coordination, synergy, and effective monitoring, you mentioned earlier there are about 5,000 monitors. I know recently they trained independent monitors, but are they given feedback? Are they doing what they're supposed to do to ensure that the right beneficiaries are the ones benefiting?
You see, that's the object of monitoring and evaluation, so that you go in there and you see what are you doing. Are you doing it well? Are you doing it right? Is it penetrating deeply as you design it? So the independent monitors are now, they have been trained. All their devices, as we speak, are being prepared. They have not actually started, in addition to all the micro monitoring.
When you say
that we
devices,
have been, devices mean tablets, with all the questions, and they take image, and you can do your own fingerprinting, and then they catch where, you know, for example, Empower. They go to the place where you are a volunteer, and they ask the people, is Kabiru here? We have in our data that Kabiru, who is an engineer, is supposed to be with this water board. Is he here? Then the man said, we have not seen Kabiru for the last 6 months. Then you see you have captured that Kabiru actually have absconded. And then we get the feedback. And then we trace it. Has Kabiru been collecting his stipend? And the stipend has to be signed by the... So who is approving for, you know, these type of intriguing questions is what the devices are used for. And we're not giving space. That is why the devices, if it is a form, people can change it. You go and sleep with them. But these devices, at the end of the day, you punch off a button, the data actually is in our own situation room here, and the analysis here. So this is the change in terms of tracking these things. And we hope it's going to improve and minimize the kind of errors that we have been seeing in our country.
Okay, are you also collaborating with state governors? Because I know when there is an intervention in a particular state, the ministry hands over to the state governments because they are the ones who understand their communities better and know the nook and cranny on who are the right beneficiaries. What is the level of cooperation with state governments?
Well, you see, the president has approved that irrespective of what party is in power, give the privilege to the governor to appoint what we call as a focal person for NSIP. This is now directly. Governor will say, this gentleman is a matured fellow, he has experience. In my assessment, he is fair and he will treat people in this state fairly. Please be the focal person. And that focal person acts like an apex chairman. Similarly, like mimicking the minister at the federal level. So he sits there. And his committee has the program manager of JIP reporting everything that is happening in JIP. They do the selection together, they do the monitoring together, they share the numbers together. Then you have the SOCO, which is the office doing the household registration for the poor, and also advancing the conditional cash transfer. Also the focal person is looking at that office, so he reports all the details there. Then you have the JIP manager, who is also reporting to that committee, and then you have the school feeding. But then we have now expanded it to ensure that the interaction and the cooperation is enhanced. So that focal person serving as the coordinator will mimic the committee of the minister at the federal, at the state too. We call it the State Coordination and Cooperation Committee, where the manager sits as members, but we also have the UBEC, who is the state UBEC person, executive secretary, sitting on that committee. So anytime you are discussing about primary schools, he has all the data and he will say yes or no. And then we have the Bureau of Statistics person who is sitting there so that the numbers are actually compared and reliable. We have the primary healthcare person also there, who when you are doing with healthcare, so we create that coordination so that at the state level, you have a very strong cooperation and coordination team to drive it at the bottom.
Larva?
Okay, for the conditional cash transfer, people have questioned inclusivity. So what is your office doing to see that everyone is being carried along?
Well, you can't, when you have 7.9 to 8 million households so far documented, close your eyes and multiply these households by 5,000 naira a month and see the kind of resources that you require. You get what I mean? So that is why in budgeting, you just budget and say, this is the amount that we are doing this year. And then you leave the process, our office, to now do the selection, right? And these selections, first of all, the Honorable Minister has approved that. Please make sure that every part of this country touches this cake. So it is in 36 states and the federal capital. So how do we ensure that there is some number? So 15% of the total pool is actually based on equal distribution. So we calculate 15% of the total number based on the money available, and we just divide it by 37. And then you get maybe 100. So 100, 100, 100, everybody, no matter who you are, whether you are poor or rich or strong, you will get 100 beneficiaries. The next 30, 40% is on poverty incidence. Bureau of Statistics has, for example, as we speak, Sokoto has the highest head count in terms of income poverty based, 88%, while Lagos has the lowest, which is 4.3%. So you use these indices on 40% and calculate that, and you put another number. The third is on population. The more people, the more poverty on assumption that you have. So we get 15% again on population, and then you calculate, and then you have by local governments. So you calculate. So you add all these things, and you get a figure. And then you use your structures to ensure that you are fair in terms, I mean, ideally every Nigerian would want the government, including the private sector or anybody, to ensure that the 7.9 or the 8 million households are all looked after. Every Nigerian would want this. But shortage of resources will not enable you to do that. So you have to build up another criteria to say, who are the poorest of the poor? Who are the most vulnerable? And then you inject that at that level, hoping that they will be a little bit stronger and they'll go up the ladder a little bit. And you continue putting all these programs in an integrated manner. So if you close your eyes and assume that in this poor household that they are getting 5,000 naira, their children are attracted to a primary school because of the feeding. So you are lessening it a little bit. Maybe the father and the mother, you know, have got skills. They know how to do business. They utilize this. And then maybe if they are now up and running, they can have access to the Jeep loan, which is 50,000 naira. So as you do this integrated approach, using powers of ICT to see what is happening, gradually you can actually lift a lot of people out of it.
You know, Dr. Binder, as you're explaining all of this, there's a lot of math going on in my head. And when you were talking about the coordination, you know, the process of coordination within the monitors and also the focal persons, how they coordinate and all of that, that's a huge task. But let's look at resources, because Laraba asked on how the numbers, you know, people are eager to be part of this NSIP. And the resources, from what you're saying, is short. But the budget for 2021, the approved budget, is 765 billion naira, which is the highest allocation for among selected projects. Now, 400 for to go into the direct investment, and then 365 to upscale the program. Aside the budget, are there ways, you know, the ministry can look at, you know, where support can? I know World Bank, you know, collaborates a lot with Nigeria in issues like this. But what other means? Because if we're talking social inclusion, if we must breach that margin, then everybody that deserves to be among the numbers should be included.
Yes. Actually, this program, you are right, is a very complex and huge. Reason being, poverty itself is very complex and huge. A poor person is a person who doesn't have enough food to eat. But that's not the only thing.
Yes.
His children does not have opportunity to go to school. He is not educated and he doesn't have skills. He is drinking bad water, therefore he has waterborne diseases. His wife will not go to a hospital to deliver, so she is prone to maternal and child mortality, and so on and so on. So that's how complex poverty itself is. And I agree with you. How are we opening up to ensure that the partnership, the cooperation gets stronger? I am happy to report to you that a lot of the international donor partners and development partners are on this. They call it the social protection project. You know, you have to have a safety net for people not to fall through and hit the floor. And in fact, like Professor Kumadewa will put it, you have to also provide a tarpaulin so that when they bounce, it will bounce them up. But the president has very, very clearly given his policy direction. He wants Nigeria in the next 10 years to lift 100 million people out of absolute poverty challenges. Now, if the average based on our population is 200 million, it's around 43-45%. We are talking of maybe 80 to 90 million people as we speak. But I am telling you, to do this, and you see the president himself knows that. He said in 10 years, it's not in 1 year. So when you see social investment program coming in 2016, we're in 2021, it's 4 years. You get what I mean? So, but you're building momentum. Look, if you look very, very deeply into this program and see the contractors who are assigned to look for where the food is, the farmers who are encouraged to produce the rice that feeds the children, the people who are moving these facilities from one point to the other, and so on and so forth. The secondary employment and shock treatment socially is huge. But then, who looks at this to actually report to say that we're making progress? That is why the monitor and evaluation is very, very important. And fortunately enough, Nigeria is making huge progress compared to any other African country in terms of digitization. This introduction of this digital economy ministry is actually working. We are using it everywhere, you know, to ensure that Nigerians, they have their NIN, to minimize these corrupt practices in terms of beneficiaries.
To avoid duplication.
Yes, recording people so that instantly you can be able to analyze and segregate how many women, how many disabled, how many people below the age of 35, and so on and so forth. Is very, very intense, very impressive, very difficult also to communicate to Nigerians what is happening in the back end, but it is happening.
Larva?
Okay, I was going to ask, we're talking about school feeding program that caters for the pupil. And then there are women that are being in the communities that are being drawn. How do you identify that this person is going to make a meal that is going to serve this? Because I have seen a viral video of a meal that was presented to a certain school. How do you draw them, and how do you control what they give to these pupils?
Well, you see, the selection, the school feeding program has got three major elements. Okay. First, you must have the food material. So there are producers and vendors. So producers are there, they are producing, they are not the ones cooking. Vendors go to aggregate these things to supply to the cook. Then you have the cooks, who are expected to be community-based, right? And then the children and the feeding. So the production and the aggregation is literally like a contract, kind of, but it's not really a contract. So the procurement of this is actually done at the community level, right? So that they have identified people who have the capacity. They have either their keke napep or their own little truck, and they know the markets around the communities where they can go and source. They know the market days. They know the kind of produce. We have a map, you know, to show that in this area you have rice and millet and tomato and bitter leaf and so on. So concentrate on the commodities you have. So the meals are not the same all over Nigeria. It's pulling from the resources. So the next is the cooks. The cooks are all women. There is not one single man who is a cook. So that reduces the potential.
Are they being monitored?
They are first of all being trained. You know, there are health issues, there are management issues. When you have children who are hungry, and you know Nigerian, something tells you that you're not going to get it. Even at the airport, you have your boarding pass. Something is telling you that you will not get a seat. So immediately they say, oh, it's now time to fly to Lagos. You see people rushing to the gate when already you have your seat. So the same thing will happen at the feeding. When you say, whoop, they are going to share the food, all the children will start rushing. So they are trained to do with crowd management. How do you calm the children, section by section, class by class, to feed? Thirdly, they are taught on the importance of getting the food right. If you don't, health challenges is a very, very serious implication. 4, we encourage the children and the philanthropists. I mean, I did that in my community when I was in SSG in Adamawa State, that they go around and tell people that we have this primary school, we need assistance to do with the bowls for serving, you know, because the cooks, the meal, remember, is only 70 naira.
Yes.
And so the children are expected to provide their own feeding utensil, right, the bowl or whatever. So we are seeing a lot of philanthropic contributions, and some government to the state government are buying that. So they have their, so the cooks are actually taught to not just trust that the child has brought the bowl, they wash it too, to make sure that that helps. And then certainly they are taught on the menus. We do
to cook
the
the right food. To cook the right food.
Yes, to cook
because
the right,
it's to
but the
promote
menu
nutrition
too.
for
You are
these
not
children.
just rice and stew, rice and stew, rice and stew every day. You can have an egg today, or in some schools they even have yogurt, a glass of milk. Some they even have spaghetti and pasta. You cannot believe this, you know, because the more you cook, the cheaper it becomes. And all these managerial things are actually taught, but their selection again is community based.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about school children, this is the right time to tell us about the alternate school program. You are the chairman, 33-man technical working group.
Yeah.
So tell us, what should Nigerians expect? What is different from the homegrown school feeding program?
Well, the homegrown feeding program, they are feeding informal public schools. So there's a building, there's a headmaster, there are teachers, and there are people, the cooks come there with their food and share it. But, and I can tell you, Ministry of Education is doing wonderfully well through their UBEC and partnership with so many NGOs to address primary school education or delivery of basic education. But as we speak, there is a report that Nigeria has over 13 million children out of school. And the president is worried about this. And the president said, in addition to the efforts of the Ministry of Education and all other education services, Ministry of Humanitarian working very closely with Ministry of Education, I want you to shock treat these out of school children. I want you not to only consider that there is a school and children come to it, but I want you to take education to the children. So that is how the alternate school program was designed.
So how is it going to be?
Yeah, so who are these children? These children are in the markets. These children are in the mechanic villages, in the spare parts villages. These children are near the stadium or the supermarkets and so on and so forth. These children are in the unserviced areas of Nigeria and so on and so forth. So this committee is documenting where are these children hiding. Many are already Almajiris, formal Almajiris in Almajiri schools and Almajiris on the streets that are not in schools at all. So when these children are documented and the progress, we have made a huge progress. Now we have designed a 4-module education platform. So they will be taught a little bit of English for communication purposes. Education is what opens everything. A little bit of arithmetic so that they can be able to have, at that age, how to calculate 2 + 2, 4, and so on and so forth, and be able to appreciate. And then third, they'll be given some social subject, morality, and don't steal, don't get follow people and so on, to minimize these issues of children being stolen and children being used for cultists and so on and so forth. And then we have a skill. So the children too, at their level, they can be taught how to do something so that it can be able to trigger that.
Just to hold your thoughts there, I'm getting this confused. Are they going to be within the 4 walls of a proper school?
No.
Or there will be facilities
Once
built
we
for
are
them?
let me give you a crude example.
Okay.
You go to Yola Market, and all these women and their fathers, they are selling bits of it. Their children are playing everywhere. We go in the middle of the market. If we're lucky, we can find a huge tree, big tree there. And we can be able to, using the market management, secure the shade under this tree and buy mats.
Okay.
And then spread the mats there. And then start our own enumeration programs. But then the good thing about the program is that, first, we will also tap into the N-Power and the NYC capacity and train those people to deliver those simple 4 courses to the children. Then we will also now bring the school feeding program under that tree to make sure that these children too, they get 1 quality meal per day, which is an attraction. And then we continue to monitor. So if the first day probably you'll get 10 children, but when you feed that children, Believe you me, the second day, you will get 50 children.
Yes.
And when the talk goes out, even children that are not in the market will say that, they are giving food with egg and a piece of meat. Then, so this is now the technical working group's responsibility to see how do you manage it? Do you now look for another tree? Do you now, so we are expected to manage this. So imagine you have to produce the teaching materials. You have to now ensure that you have people to manage these children first while you are teaching. And then you have to monitor whether the impact of this particular strategy is actually preparing children either to go to school or straight away to be inclusive in the economy.
When is it going to be implemented?
This program has already started in terms of the planning and the enumeration and the documentation. But we're hoping that we'll go to the field under those trees, sitting on those markets with our NYCs and Empowers probably in the next 2 to 3 months. This is the timeline.
Okay, Laraba, your final question, and very briefly, Dr. Bender, we are running out of time.
Okay, so I was going to ask, you have enumerated all that you're going to do for the alternate school feeding. Now, if a child comes to you at the end of the day and say, I like what you're doing, and I would like to go to school from here, are you going to, knowing that they are on the street corners, are you going to take responsibility? Because some of them don't even have parents.
Yeah.
So what is the ministry going to do? Because I see the ministry is talking about feeding. Are you also going to try to see that you take them to school?
Well, you see, that is why the cooperation and the coordination is very, very important.
Okay.
If you are just looking at the National Social Investment Office or the ministry alone, you will not get the big picture. If you look at the committee that Ruth said, inaugurated by Mr. President, the chairperson for that committee is the Honorable Minister herself, the Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk. The co-chair is the Honorable Minister of Education. Then the members, Honorable Minister of State, and you have a long list of partners, including the National Assembly. So this is supposed to be a all hands on deck kind of thing. We're hoping to see, as we do the informal under the tree shock treatment, we would love to see the schools are in the vicinity of the areas are now getting the enrollment increased because we've prepared some of these children to be absorbed by the formal school. So it's all an all hands on deck thing, and we're hoping that it will work. For us, we're very, very committed. We have a committed minister. The president is committed, and we will leave no stone unturned to ensure that not just the social investment programs are fully implemented, but the alternate school program is effective.
One word before I let you go, Dr. Bender. What do you foresee for the future if we're looking at the NSIP? We're looking at changing lives for children, vulnerable groups, and all of that. One word.
I think young people should understand that it's high time that we face our leaders and we face our country and we take the bull by the horn to participate effectively. Be judicious and a very hungry Nigerian for correct things. And I'm sure the opportunities that are opened up by the government will probably be a catalyst for your life to change.
Indeed, life-changing experiences is what we hope to see for Nigerians. Thank you very much, Dr. Umar Bindir. He's the National Coordinator for the National Social Investment Program. Thank you for your time and the insight on this.
Thank you very much. Make sure you wear your mask. Here we are practicing social distancing. Go and get your jab so that your vaccine is effective, and pray for the nation too.
Indeed, we need that right now. Thank you very much, Laraba. Also,
thank you very much for having me.
Humanitarian correspondent for the Abuja Inquirer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's nice having you here. All right, we've been looking at sustaining the National Social Investment Program for Nigerians. And it's a whole new, norm. Looking at the NSIP, poverty is a global norm, and one strategy the administration has adopted is the NSIP, and we hope to see the desired change, in the lives of these beneficiaries. I am Ruth Aguele. Thank you very much for your time with us. Bye.